Chris, welcome to Blue Collar Visionary.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I got a question for you. It's I think it was Confucius. I didn't confirm, but it's we all have two lives, and the second life starts when we realize we only have one. We all have two lives. The second life starts when we realize we only have one.
Okay.
Is there something that comes to mind for you on that?
Yeah. There's actually two things that came to mind, two different instances. Um, right away, my brain went to my kids. Like when I had my first child, there was a chapter change for me. We're just kind of like rededicated, kind of got a little bit deeper, dug my heels back into uh, shedding some of like being willing to change the page in the chapter, right? Change the page in my life just to really dig into adulthood. Had my first kid, like, all right, let's kind of put some of the fun, what I knew of like really good fun times kind of on the side, and let's do just be excited to be a dad, family man, things like that. The other thing I was thinking about started much farther before that, and I kind of have this little mantra or motivator, if you will, powdered milk. Powdered milk. I remember, I remember early on in life, um, there are some times that we were just the only thing we had for our cereal or milk at dinner time was just powdered milk. That was it. We were just single mom. It was rough times. She worked her tail off to provide, which was great. Very grateful for that. But reflecting back on it, I knew growing up that I never wanted to be in that situation again. So from that point forward, it was I will do everything that I can to make sure that we never get back there. Whether it's business of one way or another, buying and buying, fixing cars or selling, just whatever opportunity. I just wanted to push super hard to never get back there. So I think that was kind of the initial, unbeknownst to me at the time, was one of the motivators that's kind of at my core. Just never wanted to get back there. Just always trying to push hard to be successful, whatever that means.
Yeah. What what qualities or characteristics did you um absorb, kind of catch, pick up, maybe not knowing at the time, but you reflect back now that you learned from your mom, and yeah, what stuck with you?
I think just the show must go on. I think about I think about her and how, I mean, three boys, single mom. Um, no matter how exhausted or how tired she was when she got home at the end of the day, I mean, the show must go on. I mean, the kids need to get fed, the house needs to be maintained. Um, just you have to keep on pushing, no matter what, just to get to the end of the day, and then it just starts all over again. So that was a big takeaway. Another takeaway is just heart, caring for people. She sacrificed a lot of herself just to, for the benefit of others around her. So, and I think that's in me too. I don't want to like discount my father either. Like I've got a great relationship with my father, but for that chapter in my life growing up, that's just kind of what I witnessed through my lenses, so to speak. So
What was the first side hustle entrepreneurial journey? Probably not as a kid, not a side hustle, but when you started, you wanted to help your mom maybe pick up some slack or whatever it was. You
hmm
remember that first thing?
oh yeah, I do. We lived in a trailer park, and the owners of the park, they had this little shed with lawnmowers in it, right? And those were like community lawnmowers that all the neighbors and stuff could use. I couldn't have been much more than 10, 11 years old, or I just went and flyered the neighborhood, like, hey, do you want me to mow your lawn for $5, whatever it is. And sure enough, so I go grab one of those community lawnmowers and just start mowing people's lawns at 10 years old, so I can go buy baseball cards.
Amazing. Um, so as we kind of progress down, you get older. What's the next inflection point? Did you go to college? Did you jump right into the workforce? What were those early young adult years like?
Great questions. No, I never went to college. In fact, I dropped out of high school. But I knew how important, like getting your diploma, getting your GED, and just still getting off to the right, staying on the right track was. I knew that was important. Um, so, and I think that kind of wound up being a motivator for me as well. Like I never got the diploma, so I still have to prove myself to the world that I'm capable of, um, hanging out with college-minded or college graduates, or high school graduates. What I don't know, just my own kind of motivator. So, I guess the next inflection point
Wait, let
was.
me. What was that? Zooming into the dropout decision.
Mhm.
How did that come to be?
I had a hard time. I guess what I've come to believe or understand is I just had a hard time learning in school, like in like just the traditional sense, like the people factory, the children factory that goes through the school system. We've got this set of curriculum and it's done this way, and just this is how we teach you. And I just had kind of like just didn't learn the same type of way. Also through the journey, there was I went through like just mainstream school up until sixth grade or seventh grade, and then my mom moved to a different city, and I hopped over to that school, and then hopped back over to a different middle school. And my dad homeschooled me for a little while. Then I hopped back into mainstream again. Went to up through high school for a little while. Oh, then I was actually in a Christian school, private school for a while. So bounced around quite a bit. Landed back in mainstream high school, um, where I was behind credits for a little ways. So catching back up was real hard. Went to an alternative program, back to mainstream, back to alternative, and I'm just like,
Man,
I'm exhausted.
yeah,
I'm exhausted. What I want to do is I just want to get out in the world. I want to get out in the world. Um, so then I discovered sales, kind of jumped into sales and just started, dug my heels into the workforce. And that's kind of where I've been ever since. Did well in it, but that's where I wanted to be. That's kind of where I was like, the school thing is behind me. It was exhausting. Let me find something else just to have fun with. And
yeah.
that's
Do you feel like jumping around? You had to have any like survival mechanics, or like some people say that's why they became the class clown, because that's how they um were able to make friends fast, and it was like a defense mechanism or something. Or so I was talking to this other guy who had actually kind of a similar story, and he said he was all about like excelling in sports, because if no matter where he was in sports, um like you would get friends immediately if you were good. Do you have anything that helped you adapt or maneuver through all that instability?
I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying about the just like that those early home life, right? Just feeling like, just really poor, right? I feel like we were pretty poor. So how I could feel accepted or comfortable is just trying to just doing whatever I could, figure out whatever I could to feel safe and secure financially.
Mm,
Um, and that, like, creating a business, creating something that works, and just continuing to repeat that process until I found, something that works.
yeah.
Right. So side hustle after side hustle after side hustle, and you're learning things every step of the way.
Hmm.
Failures are successes. Without you make so many gains by making mistakes. I think people kind of get hung up on, like, they're so afraid to do something, to try something, because of this made up fear of making mistakes. But there's so many great things that come out of that experience. So
Can you think of a failure that at the time was so painful, but then now looking back, it's like that birthed something new, and that failure was actually a blessing?
I can't think of any like failures that jump out. They're just new new opportunities, are just that kind of present themselves, and I was excited to go try that new thing.
Yeah.
Um, just buying a car and fixing it up and selling it for a little bit more, or just a lawnmower, a snowblower, then to a car.
Yeah.
And there was some fear moments. I didn't know what I was getting into, but I also tried to um, find professionals around me that can guide me through a difficult decision, right? So I can make an educated guess on something, not just shooting from the hip and moving forward. And then specifically that kind of nervous moment, I bought a company. I bought a company. Guy was moving out of town, whatever. He was going to kind of get rid of it, and I kind of saw an opportunity. But
What age?
30, 36,
Okay.
37.
Okay, a little bit farther down the road. Okay, gotcha.
Yep. And it was, I mean, it's related to the business that I'm in now. So hindsight, I mean, looking back, it's like that was just, it made a lot of sense to do it, but leveling up to that point was a little nerve wracking.
Mm-hmm.
I always, when I started out, like these little side hustles, or I'll buy something cheap, fix it, and then sell it, and make $100. So then you do the next bigger item, you want to make $300, or you want to make $500 or $1,000. Just constantly trying. All right, so how do I level up to the next thing? $100 is $100. It's a little bit of extra cash in your pocket, but what's the next level? So, and the business thing was definitely going outside of the comfort zone, buying that thing for a lot more than a few $100.
I want to get to that. I want to get to more relationship on money with the sales job. What were you selling, and how did that form? What kind of character forming was that?
So one of the first sales jobs, like just retail. I spent a bunch of time in retail and eventually made my way into cell phones, of all things. And the key takeaway from that I can still apply to what I'm doing now is volume, right? So I had lots of customers that kept coming in and out and in and out and in and out. Then you're having the same conversations. You got multiple customers or multiple deals that you're working at the same time. So just high volume was the big takeaway from that sales. Dabbled in cars, like selling cars for a little while, phones, electronics, some high-end electronics kind of stuff, but all kind of in that fast-paced retail world.
So with a volume sale, what do you do different in a volume sale than a low volume, high ticket sale?
Well, low volume, high ticket sale, it takes a lot longer to nurture the sale, right? In some cases, it could take months or years for a deal to come through. If you're a house or a business or a building, or big pharmaceutical sales, right? I mean, it could take months for a deal to close, where the short term is multiple times a day. You can ask for that sale instantly.
So you're always just like in a closing mindset in a way?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you become pretty good at closing?
Well, it's always a work in progress,
Yeah.
but yeah, I enjoy it. And it's definitely shifted, like the mindset from just trying to get the deal to really listening to what it is that the customer is asking for. It's not always right on the surface what they're asking for, but to pick up on certain key indicators of what they're trying to ask, and finding solutions for them, solving those needs, solving those problems. So, and always asking for the sale. You have to ask for it if you're going to close it.
What do you think most people get wrong about closing or sales?
Uh, when they don't ask for the sale, you have
How do you ask? What's like an appropriate, non-pushy way to ask?
uh, does this all sound right? Does this sound good? Is this something you could see us taking care of?
Mm.
Would you like to get on the schedule? Should we put you on the schedule for Tuesday or Thursday of this week? Um, those are subtle ways to just ask for the sale. Um, and the other thing I see a lot of people do is that they make it about themselves and not about the customer. Kind of go into it with the mindset like, oh, I'm hungry for money. I want to get a sale. I want to get a sale. This is all about me. Um, you got to flip that. You got to find a way to flip that mentality. And so they're calling you out to their house or their property, whatever, for an estimate for a quote. Obviously, they've got a problem, but if you're trying to make it all about yourself, like how much more can I add to this ticket? How much more can I add to this ticket compared to like the mindset of I want to make a relationship with this customer, right? Word of mouth is the best form of advertising. So if you can go into a situation more in like I want to build a relationship type mentality, where this customer is going to call me back over and over and over again, and if I do a good enough job, they're going to refer me out to how many of their friends when the opportunity presents itself. So, and I think that's a key. That's a key that you got to take with you in sales, right? Try to zoom out a little bit and look at the overall picture instead of that immediate deal close. You know,
Is there a moment that you felt going to the money thing, that you felt like you made it, or you sold something, or you created something, you got a win, and you're like, I'm rich?
far from feeling rich, and I don't. I wonder when that actually comes. I still don't feel successful. I mean, I'm busy. I'm busy and have created opportunities. Um, but as it gets busier and busier and busier, there's just more stuff to focus on and keep track of. Yeah, so maybe in some eyes we're successful with what we do, but I'm just always trying to build a safer network, a safer platform for others to operate in.
Mm.
Does that make you know what I mean?
Yeah. You're an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurship is risky. How have you been able to navigate this relationship with money where, it like the risk to you, I have a feeling might have like felt more, maybe not. Maybe it's such a necessity, but to me there's like this polarity with money is, I want money to feel safe. But if that was the key, then most people would just go get a job and take the safe route, 9 to 5, work, a check every 2 weeks. But here you are doing something on entrepreneurship, which on the surface to many looks risky. How do you reconcile that?
Uh, I've done several variations of it throughout my life. Right, we talked about the lawnmower thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So I've become pretty comfortable in that space. I've spent so much time in the mitigated risk space, trying something new, that I'm just comfortable in it. Confident in myself that it's going to be okay. Um, I think that's a big part of it. Just being confident in yourself that it's going to work out.
Mm.
Um, I know where I came from, right? So if I'm already a mile ahead of where I came from, and I want to try to jump into something different, let's put a lot of thought into what we're about to jump into. Try to calculate that risk just a little bit, and if it doesn't work out, and if it's a failure, so to speak, I can go all the way back here, and it's still going to be okay. We're still going to be able to live and survive and still have the roof over our head or be able to breathe and have our family together. So I guess I don't want to go back here, but I know if we had to, it's still going to be okay. So that's part of where that confidence comes from. Like, just trust yourself, trust yourself and be confident, just kind of taking that step.
Yeah. That makes sense. You have so much evidence of being able to make it happen. And you have like a whole lifetime of evidence of side hustles and ways of making money and sales. And I guess that in a way, it's easier to trust yourself to make money than trust some random company. Everyone thinks working for a company is safe. It actually isn't that safe. I mean, for some companies it can be, but anyone that has a job that could be fired tomorrow, then what are they going to do? Then they're desperate.
Yeah.
Like entrepreneurship is almost a safer route if you learn the skill set than working a W-2.
Yeah, you kind of have you're in control, kind of, you can control of your destiny, so to speak, to a certain extent. You can be, right? The gains can be bigger, but so can the losses. When you're working for yourself, where you work for a company, it's fairly stable and predictable. And a lot of people obviously feel safe in that environment.
So let's dive into the stump grinding, stump removal. Where did this idea come from? Take me to like the early start of Bye Bye Stumps.
Like, how much time do we want to spend on this? Well, I could say it started with a flashlight. I had a.
I'm engaged.
When stump grinder kind of first came into my world was, let's see here. There was an auction, a K-bid auction for a DeWalt flashlight, right? So I won this auction for a DeWalt flashlight, which brought me to this store in St. Paul. And this store, what they sold was like returns or defects or whatever it is from Home Depots. Half of that store was a retail space where they just sell stuff to the public that wanders in. And then the other half of the store was all of their auction inventory. So I went there to pick up my flashlight that I won at the auction. And then as they're in the back room grabbing my item, I'm just wandering around the retail store. Well, tucked back underneath a shelf, behind some scratch and dent toolboxes, I see this like stump grinder, like kind of tucked way back, bunch of dust on it. I'm like, what the heck is that? And this was one of the rental machines that you could go rent at Home Depot or something. So I saw that and I started asking a couple of questions about it. Is that thing for sale? What is that thing? It's a stump grinder. And like, yeah, it's for sale, but we can't get it running, whatever. I just did a quick little Google search on it. It was like almost $5,000 is what these things are brand new. So I started asking the guy questions about it. I'm like, well, you guys want to sell that or what? And he's like, sure. I'm like, oh, how much? And kind of go back and forth a couple of times. And I'm like, well, I'm taking all the risk. If it can't get it started, whatever, then it's all on me. I said, I'll gamble on it for like $300. So he's like, okay. So I walked out of there with this stump grinder for $300. Well, 15 minutes later in the garage, I had the thing running and it was good to go. So I threw a little ad out there and some neighbors, and it started to catch. Like, this person wanted that service, and this person wanted that service, and this person wanted that service, and like, there might be something here. And that was basically the birth of doing this.
Wow.
It's just kind of grown from one piece of equipment to the next piece of equipment to the next piece of equipment, and just busy.
What's a typical day look like now? When you're in season, when it's not negative 10 degrees out in Minnesota.
Right. Well, I mean, there's certain financial goals that we want to hit, revenue goals that we want to hit. Frequency of jobs. I mean, we'd like to see 7 to 10 different locations every day, per rig that's going out there. Usually get to the shop right around 7:00 and be on the first job site right around 8:00. Typically for myself, I like to get back to pick up my kids and stuff like that. So usually I'm back at the shop at the end of the day, right around 3:30. 3:30 is kind of the end of the day. So leave that last job site 3:30, get back, switch trucks, get back down, to pick up my kids. So the day is not, for me, how I've carved it out, it's not super, super long. Um, Others that get into it, if they want to run longer hours and kind of push the envelope even harder, there's definitely the opportunity to do so. But yeah, so 5, 7, 10 different locations per day.
And what's this sales process? Well, I guess before we get to the sales process, leads, is it a lot of paid ads, word of mouth? What seems to be working?
Now we've done it for a while. Some of the relationship stuff really helps out a lot.
Referral partners?
Referral partners, and believe it or not, repeat business. Now that we've been in it for a while, that I didn't really see coming.
Yeah.
But again, if you do a good job for somebody, they remember you. They remember that experience. It's maybe a little bit of a blanket statement, but I think a lot of homeowners have had like a poor or less than perfect experience with a contractor. I don't want to be that. I want to be the opposite, right? I think there's a lot of room and opportunity in whatever contracting space that you work in, to be a standout, to have a good relationship, to create a good experience, and have great communication with your customers. I think there's a lot of opportunities to improve in that space. For contractors kind of have a bad rap for not being exceptional in those spaces, and I think that that's something that kind of separated us out.
Is that basically all a contractor needs to do to become 80% more professional, is communicate more effectively?
It blows my mind how many contractors do not return phone calls, or they ghost their customers. Yeah, I'm going to be there at XYZ time, and they just blow it off. Like, their scheduling sucks. Like, they do a terrible job keeping track of their commitments. And at the other end of that lack of involvement, you're wasting people's time, right? They're taking time out of their day to come meet you because you promised that you were gonna be there, and then you just completely ghost them. So in that, I think that narrative like happens over and over and over again in whatever contractor space that it is. Where all it takes is a simple phone call. If you get delayed on one job a little bit longer and you're not going to be there on time, make the phone call. People understand that things come up, but just make the phone call. So communication,
Yeah.
I think, is.
Or just text them too.
Text, yeah.
You don't want to talk. Like, phone call's best.
Mm-hmm.
Or a text. Okay, cool. So we're kind of going back to your roots of high volume sales. You're doing 7 to 10 a day. Is the sales process, is it all taking place ahead of time, or do you go out and give a quote, or is it an on-site quote and then take care of the thing right away, or how does that work?
We've got a handful of questions that we ask as people call in, or they inquire. So we're getting leads from either paid ads or some other social network, social media kind of I guess pipelines. So it comes in from a variety of places. We've got some guerrilla marketing tactics. We've got, like I said, SEO. We're pretty heavy into search, the paid ads kind of thing, and then a few handful of other avenues. Even we just unrolled stumpgrinding.com too, so we own that site. So that's actually a nationwide lead generator for all stump grinding companies, really, where they can kind of tie into this program and then get leads in their area. So yeah, we're pretty focused on intaking leads. But
how many leads a day are coming through? For a week,
between phone calls and I probably get 20 to 30 phone calls or texts a day, and then a handful more through different online forms. And so the sales process, like with each one of those customers, I've got a handful of questions that I ask them to determine whether or not I need to go out and see it in person. A lot of these jobs might be like a couple $100 or $300 or $150. So logistically, to get a person and a vehicle out there for an estimate on $150 or $200 or $300 stump project, it starts to not make sense financially to go out there one time, to give them a bid for $200, to leave, and then for them to make a decision, and then you come back later to earn that $200, where it just makes a lot more sense to have a discussion over the phone, quote it over the phone.
Yeah.
But through this series of questions, you can pretty quickly determine, does it make more sense to go out there and see it? There's a lot of variables to grinding a tree stump. There's size, there's flare, there's rocks, there's roots. 90
retaining walls.
Yes, I mean, right. Yeah, you were there for quite an intense project. But there's a lot of different variables that can dictate the price, access. So, and through those questions, you can kind of figure out what you need to do next. Yeah.
Nice. So you guys are getting a bunch of leads. You're got a system pretty dialed in, and so you're taking the next step in growth, which is offering franchises. And maybe talk through the benefits of why somebody would sign on to be a franchisee of yours, and some of the value adds that would be make it a no-brainer.
Yeah, some of the value. Well, I think it's a really fun industry in the first place. There's it's what you're doing on a daily basis is you're wrecking stuff. You're using a powerful piece of equipment to just rip through a tree stump. It's a unique process. Very, very few homeowners would ever have kind of like done the actual process before. I feel like it hangs out in the space just outside of DIY. What most people are comfortable DIYing. There's some people that'll go out there and they'll go rent a machine and kind of do it, but it's not like building a birdhouse. You got to be kind of comfortable with some equipment. So some of the benefits is you get to play with some pretty cool toys every single day, and you get to destroy stuff too, which is fun. Some of the benefits that people get by coming in with us is, I mean, it's taken me a bunch of years to get to this point where we are right now, and so a ton of time and a lot of money. Trial and error. Does this work? Doesn't that not work? Okay, let's move forward with this tactic. This is good for branding. This is good for website. This is good for SEO. Tens of thousands of dollars at least have been invested to get to where we are right now. So by joining in with us, you expedite all that. It costs, I think we set the franchise fee at a reasonable entry point. It's not too crazy high, but it's also just high enough where the tire kickers kind of stay out. It isn't throwaway money. So if you come in, you're committed, and that's who we want to work with too, is people that are going to be committed and engaged in the product, in the service, with the customers. Like I spoke about communication, and so they care, right? So whoever comes on board, we just need to make sure that they care like we do. So,
do they also is there any benefit with the stumpgrinding.com, and then do you help with lead generation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, whoever comes on board, it's their business. First and foremost, it's their business. We will support them and get them started, get them launched, and get them the tools that they need to get going. But there's marketing initiatives that they do as well. But yes, they have access to stumpgrinding.com. Yes. I mean, the overall answer is yes. I mean, I want them to be successful. Every part of my being wants them to be successful, right? If they're not happy doing this, and if they're not making money and being successful, then it doesn't work for anybody. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Some of the other benefits of coming in, a group that we've identified that we really want to spend time working with. There's a lot of different people from different walks of earth that are out there, but a different career paths and different industries and different expertise and different skill sets. But I think a group that we've kind of identified that would be really great to work with in here is kind of the people that are feeling burnt out in their corporate setting.
Mm.
So these are the same kind of people that go home after their day, and install flooring in their house, or frame out or remodel one of their bathrooms or something. So they've got a skill set that goes well beyond just their corporate their job, whatever their career. So they're feeling a little unfulfilled in their corporate setting. I think this is an opportunity for you to take those skills that whether it's reading P&L statements or managing people, understanding how teams work, understanding why communication is important, taking a lot of those skills that they have and they're really good at, and applying them in kind of a different environment. And I think that's where it can really grow, right? They're really utilizing those skills, but instead of doing it for somebody else, doing it for themselves, right? So I think it's pretty easy running the business end of a stump grinder. I think that can be learned pretty quickly, taking the machine and learning the technique to actually use it. But what is a little harder to find is that set of skills that I was just talking about before. They understand sales. They understand a little bit of marketing. They understand the organization of a business. So if there's a group of people out there that are kind of feeling underutilized or unappreciated, that they can do better for themselves, that's who we're looking to work with, to just to kind of give them the opportunity to do something for themselves with a kind of a proven system.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. So is it the type of thing that you could grow into like a pretty sizable company, or is it like an owner operator, or what kind of earning potential and future do you think a franchisee could expect?
yes, they can. I'd like them to be involved. If they purchase territory and kind of get their own territory to get started, I want them to be involved so they understand all aspects of the business, right? What it's like to be in somebody's yard or on somebody's property and how to be safe. So, but yes, it is written in the document that you can own more than one territory. So if you want to be the owner operator in your territory, fine, go after it. You'll do, you can do fine. You can do well with it. There's still enough meat left on the bone to hire somebody to operate it for you. If you're better at, creating a team and finding somebody to do all of these, to do the work for you, you'll be fine there. Then buy a second territory, but you can't come in and buy multiple territories right off the bat. You can't scoop up an entire market. You got to become excellent at what you do first before we kind of green light you onto multiple territories. But
what could somebody that hasn't gone down the franchise route benefit from going down that route?
Well, it comes with its own set of difficulties. To get started in the franchising world, it's kind of it's hard to find somebody to invest in something that has no track record, right? So as you're a brand new franchisor, you're telling everybody about this great opportunity. Well, there's nobody else that's doing it yet. There's no other franchisees that are behind you to prove your model.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit difficult to kind of get out of the gate. However, what we're finding is, if you have a good enough product, people will like it outweighs the lack of history, getting into the franchising space. I had a couple of reasons why I wanted to do it. I've also heard kind of a consistent narrative with, it's hard to find good help. It's really hard to find good help right now. It's not a universal statement. There's still lots of great workers that are out there and lots of great people that are out there. But finding good help it can be kind of difficult. So I could have grown just the standard corporate growth method, right? With more trucks and more employees and just more capital investment all over the place, and then hire an employee at $20 an hour or something to go out there and operate it. Sometimes that can kind of come with its challenges though too. You're dependent on, if this person wants to come in the morning or not. Maybe they were out too late last night, whatever, they might not come in. So the equipment is expensive to continue building out. Sure, I could have, retain much more of the revenue, that comes in by kind of growing the corporate method. But I saw an opportunity with, if people were to buy into a program, if you can create a system that people could do well on, make a good living on their own, you can create a program, create a system like that, and provide an opportunity for people to do well at, then you can continue to expand your brand. You can provide an opportunity, kind of create happiness, like help other people achieve the goals that they've set off to achieve, but they just don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
And for me, that was kind of a big part of it too, is less about making more and more and more and more money, but kind of as I go skating into the finish line and I reflect back on my life and everything that I've been involved in or everything that I've done, what feels better to me kind of as a person? Is it I made a ton of money, or I was able to help a bunch of people, kind of accomplish financial goals, or help them kind of set them off in a direction that was helpful for them and their families. So for me, that's more of a rewarding look back than sitting on a pile of cash, in a big company.
Is there a range that you would expect, just to put that carrot out for the guy that's disgruntled right now at work? What do you think could be a reasonable range of earning potential?
I got to be careful on answering that question. There's like legal reasons why I got to be careful answering that directly. So for those that are interested in learning more about it, find out how to come back to me if you have a link on the podcast or whatnot, where we can kind of sign a couple things, and then we can really, open the book up and you can kind of see really what's going on. But what I can say is there's definitely opportunity that's there. There's definitely opportunity that's there. I mean, I would love to say what it is, but there's just, reasons kind of behind the franchise as an organization, but there's, I did say there's enough meat in the bone where if you wanted to hire somebody out to run this, and you kind of still collect, I think that there's plenty of opportunity to do that. It's could be a fairly quick turnaround. You get some equipment set up, you get some leads going in, it can start pretty fast. So the lead time right now we've kind of got set up from when you go through the process to kind of getting kicked off and started is about 3 months is really kind of the goal,
Nice.
from when somebody says like, all right, cool, let's do something, to when we try to get them going full speed. So we try to have that process pretty well dialed in and condensed to as short of a timeline as possible to get you out there making money as quickly as you can.
What else didn't I ask about the franchise that would be worthwhile sharing?
Management and support. We've got a great management team that's behind us. There's a company that we hired to bring us through the process. So this is not just I had an idea and I just tried throwing all of this together on my own with no background, no education in this space. There's a group out there that we hired, so they're kind of our behind the scenes experts that walk us through all this, that have helped us create all of the documents, the operations manuals, the marketing manuals, the business plan, some of the online, some of the digital assets. So it's the real deal, not just a bush league kind of getting this thing going.
It's a proven system.
Yeah. And it's go time, something that's beautiful about stump grinding specifically, compared to some of the other industries that are out there. There's not a lot of moving parts. right? So you can do this one guy, one person. If you wanted to do it a truck and a trailer in your driveway, you could. There's not millions of dollars in equipment and build out costs and everything to get started into it for all of your equipment. Everything is financeable. So in some franchise organizations or some franchises you buy into, you have to buy a lot of like specialty equipment, or it's really difficult to get financing on some equipment or some of the products that you need. But here, the truck, the grinder, the trailer, loaders, and all that kind of stuff, it's all very standard loan formats that are out there to kind of get started with it. So that's a hurdle that's pretty easy to overcome. And as far as staffing goes, again, like I said, one person can really do it. So you don't need 3 or 4 or 5 people on the ground that you're paying while you are ramping up. You don't have to eat a ton of costs while you're ramping up, getting up to speed, waiting for business to come in. So you don't have 4 or 5 people of headcount to pay for, which is it can feel crippling. Again, the equipment costs are fairly minimal. If you would compare it to like a tree service, where you've got a chipper truck and a chipper and a grapple truck and a bunch of heads, a bunch of laborers that are on the ground and stuff. It's, you could have easily over $1 million in equipment just on the ground that you have to take on that responsibility for.
Yeah.
And sometimes including a stump grinder, so, but here it's very, very repeatable, very duplicatable, just the business model. And it's simple.
Yeah.
It's simple.
Simple scales. Simplicity scales.
What another thing too? Yeah, like when you're up in the tree, that's a delicate operation that's up there. A lot of stuff can go wrong quickly. Cutting down trees and being aerial, being 60, 70 feet up in the air, it can get kind of dangerous up there. And if you're not comfortable being up there, being in part of this industry, I want you to kind of stay closer to the ground. Another interesting thing too about this business is another interesting discovery was there's a lot of tree companies that do not grind tree stumps. A lot of them. If their schedule is full of, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 tree removals, for them to come back for $200, $300, $400, $500 stump removals, they have to take 1 or 2 people away from their tree crew to come back and do these projects that pay them 10% of what they could be making in a full tree. They've got another, so it's manpower away from their busy schedule stuff. They're big money makers. It's another piece of equipment that they have to invest in, maintain, another trailer, maybe another truck that they have to tote around with them for this kind of stuff. And they're producing, 2 stumps a day for to justify the cost of a really expensive machine, plus all the manpower and all that kind of stuff. So if they're producing 2 or 3 of those things a day, sometimes if you kind of forensically look at the figures and look at the numbers, sometimes it doesn't make sense to go spend $60, $70, or $100,000 on a stump grinder or the other setup. Just doesn't make sense to justify that expense to come do 2 or 3 of these $200-$300 stumps a day.
Yeah.
That said, you have relationships with multiple tree guys. You do a good job for them. You can come out and make sure that they are able to complete the project for their customer.
Yeah.
Right. So their customers are getting a complete process. You just kind of quietly come in after those guys are done and help them out. So there's an opportunity for growth there. And then the idea was kind of presented to me. We kind of came along that having your own tree company and then separately having a Bye Bye Stumps franchise also makes sense. And this concept was brought to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes complete sense. So I was sitting down with a good friend of mine, Nick Schroeder, who owns a tree service called Schroeder Outdoor Services. And he's like, Chris, I'm really thinking about buying one of these franchises from you, or considering it. And here's why it makes sense. So if I produce 2 or 3 stumps a day, that's hard for me to justify, the expense, like I was saying. But what does make sense is this could be another huge revenue provider for us. And then at almost a cost of zero, I'm able to come in and grind all of the stumps that I'm producing anyways. So you've got a business going that's busy all the time doing, stumps for whoever else. And then every once in a while, I pop back in and I take care of the ones that I'm producing on my own anyways. All right. So it's almost $0 to take care of mine. And then I'm making a whole bunch of money over on the other side for other just random customers. So I've got 2 businesses that are operating full time.
Moving on as we wrap things up, I am curious one thing about what's your practice around goal setting, visualization, working towards a target? What have you found to be effective?
And necessity is the mother of all invention, right? So as you get busier, you start finding different needs that you have to figure out, right? And this kind of ties into that. So one of my goals is creating more time, right? One of my requirements is being able to spend time with my kids and my family. When I look back, I don't want to be one of the guys that's like, man, I wish I would have spent more time with my kids. As they're older and the opportunity is gone, I want to do what I can to spend as much time as I can with them. So I think that's one of my goals, and then I just kind of work backwards from there. And necessity is the mother of all invention, right? So as I start to get busier and busier and busier, then I have to invent ways to keep that time managed. So I guess that's kind of what it is for me. So my goal in this part of the discussion is just spending my time with my kids, and how do I make sure that is maintained.
Yeah, I like that. That's simple, but it's like very clear. Then you just work backwards, just measure. It's like time is a very measurable thing, so I understand if you're doing a good job or not. As we wrap things up, I'm curious. Last question: what would you like to leave the audience with through your journey of life, entrepreneurship? Is there an encouraging word, a word of wisdom, a challenge? What would be that parting word?
That's a great question. And yeah, like golden rule, man. Like just be good to people. There's so much doom and gloom that's all around us, right? Everywhere you look is always just so much doom and gloom. But if you just shut off the screens for a while, shut off the TV for a little while and just spend some time with people that you actually care about, like there's still a wonderful amount of good people that are out there. So make the phone call to somebody check in with somebody that you haven't checked in with in a while. Just practice being a good person, and just, yeah, that's it. So that's kind of where I like to be at, just with people. There's a lot of good in the community that's still out there.
Amen.
It's not all what's just on TV.
Yep.
So
awesome.
Do right.
Chris, thanks for being on Blue Collar Visionary.
This is great, Danny. I'm really happy to be part of it. Awesome. This is a great podcast, so awesome. I feel very fortunate to be part of it. So,
amen. Blessed to have you. All right.
Thank you.
Till next time.